All right, Brooke, good afternoon. What's going on?
Conrad, good afternoon. Happy Friday. I hope you got your lovely wife something for Mother's Day for this upcoming weekend.
I did. It sounds like you're traveling for maybe is that the present for your wife to do a little bit
Yeah,
of
yeah.
cleaning
We
around the
came
house?
down to Bethany and took her down, and my mother-in-law is gonna be coming down, so we got the whole family down here. So yeah, we're gonna be celebrating down here. So I'm sure hopefully my kids got something presents for her.
If not, that's the text you can send when we wrap up here, which is like, to your daughters, like make sure, make sure
Yes,
you get something for mom. It's the thought
exactly.
that counts is what they say. I don't know if that's actually
Yeah.
true. I think it's the
Well,
thought that counts and something nice, but at
I
least
just
halfway there is better than none of the way there.
I delegate to my kids. They do a very good job. So.
Nice, all good. Well, Brooke, some exciting stuff here. A lot of beach maybe themes today, then, because we've got Chris with us today. He's down in Hilton Head. I'm up here in Myrtle Beach, and then you're at a beach, which you're not always. So some good stuff there. But Brooke, how did you originally connect with Chris? We'll have to give an intro here in a second. But how did you guys originally meet?
Yeah, so I think I've said this before, or I've said this many times. Usually the best contacts you make are at conferences, and it's usually they revolve around sitting at a bar. But usually, I think I made the comment it's usually 10 o'clock at night, sitting at the bar at a VRMA or VR Nation conference. But this one was the executive summit 2 years ago. We were outside, and just Chris was sitting next to me at the bar. We ended up chatting, and we've become friends ever since. So it's cool to see how that actually does come in real life.
Nice. Well, Chris, I'm assuming you don't always hang out at bars nonstop. I'm assuming you have other pursuits and exploits, as it were. So, for the listeners that maybe haven't heard of you or people that are not familiar with you, Chris, a brief history would be awesome. How you got into vacation rentals, what you're focused on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. Good to see you both. I'm 20 years in the business. Started selling real estate in '03 and naturally progressed into a vacation rental company in '07 when I had my first child, and I didn't want my wife to go back to work. And We started from ground up with 1-2 units and have built it up. And here we are today. I'm not a growth player in the market, if you will. We've got about 26, but very high end properties here on Hilton Head Island, and it's worked out very well for keeping her busy and out of my hair and me out of her hair. So it's done well. Now my son's about to actually go off to college and study business and come back and put me in retirement, I hope.
There you go. I like that. Is that the transition plan?
Well, he's going to come back. We'll see how fast he can push me out of the office. But yeah, that's the plan. That's what he wants to do.
Has
Yeah.
he been? Let me ask you this: did you break any kind of like child labor laws when he was a kid? Like, was he making beds and like cleaning houses for you when he was like
Oh,
6?
absolutely. Kid's had a blower in his hand since he was 5 years old. Yeah, blowing off properties. Absolutely. Yeah,
I
I love it.
absolutely.
We are 2 minutes and 54 seconds in before the first crime was admitted. So I think we're off the
Let the record state.
Yeah, his
I
sister
know
as
now.
well. So it's worked out well. Worked out well.
That's
Gave
good.
him,
I mean,
given
there's
him
so many
good
family
discipline.
businesses.
So yeah, that's where we're at today, and we're just busy and living life, loving what we're doing. It's a great business to be in. Certainly is.
Absolutely. Well, 20 years, Chris, I'm sure, you've learned a lot along the way. So that's kind of the premise of today's episode. We're going to talk about the mistakes that you highlighted in the book. We're going to go through each one and maybe you have some extra context or flavor to add in. And, Brooke and I have kind of done a few of these and we've learned something new from each one. There's what we joke about lately on a few episodes. So we've got some greatest hits that keep coming up, but every single time there's something new that we haven't heard before that people can benefit from. So we'll kind of start, if you're cool with it, with number one. Number one, you talked about starting out back in '07. Maybe you hadn't considered the quality and location of the properties that you were taking on into management. Maybe you were just kind of taking on whatever you could. And then after a few seasons, you realized that there was a massive difference between maybe having the right properties and the right owners and maybe the wrong properties, the wrong owners. So you mentioned that you don't have this massive portfolio, this 26 unit count that you have today, but they're high end. So I guess my question would be, how do you find the right people to manage? What does that mean from like a revenue perspective, from an owner perspective? And how do you select someone today to join a more guarded portfolio, would you say?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we started out with some things that were pretty far off the beach. Had some owners that were pretty thin on capital improvements, and some renters that weren't very very savvy in how much money they were willing to spend. And it was like a cyclone, man. I mean, the owners didn't want to fix anything. The renters complained about everything, and I'm like, I'm stuck in the middle, and I'm not making any money off of this. I'm like, this is crazy. If this is what the vacation rental business is all about, I don't want to be in it. I went through 2 seasons of that, and I turned around and fired everybody. I was like, I'm starting over. This is not how this should go. So we started targeting, of course, being in real estate and being one of the top realtors on the island at the time. We had the opportunities come to us through that funnel, and certainly being networked with all the realtors on the island. to get some oceanfront stuff and oceanfront condominiums and some very nice homes near the ocean. And so that's how we flipped it and turned it into luxury rentals of Hilton Head, is what it is today. But yeah, I have a very high threshold for working with certain clients, and it's intentional because, I mean, quite frankly, I don't service smaller properties that well. We're very much a hands-on company where we're in the properties working them. We actually do asset management through our rental business, so that when we take over these properties, there's a lot of time, energy, and effort involved. So therefore, you've got to have the revenue there in order to justify the overhead costs that I have running this business. Because I've got 5 employees for 26 properties. No one else that I know of has that many employees for that few properties. But so, I've set my threshold now. If it doesn't do $100,000 a year, then I probably am not interested in taking it on. And it's not because I don't think the properties are okay and this, that, and the other. It's just economics, because the more you grow, the more people you need to add on. And why are you growing? Are you growing to pay more payroll? Or kind of thing. So I've just kind of hit that little sweet spot where we do very well with what we've got. And it's worked out well for us.
So the funny thing, Chris, is like just about every other person before you I think we're a 40 something, podcast, has said the same thing, that they grew and then they got to the point where they realized they hired too many or brought on the wrong properties and they're firing those owners. But nobody did it to the scale that you did. No, like everybody did it in a slow weaning process, meaning they maybe fired 1 or 2 partners or 1 or 2 owners at a time. You're the first person I actually have heard that said they literally started fresh and they fired everybody. Nobody had the guts to do that. I imagine that must have been hard, right? I mean, because you had some revenue coming in at the point, right? But I guess you had your real estate business at the same time. So it's not like this was your only business.
That's true. Yeah. So, knock on wood, real estate's treated me very well here, being on a resort island, and for where it is and what it's known for. So yeah, I did have that luxury, but I just, at the same time, I was probably going to end up getting divorced if I didn't fire everybody, because it was driving us both crazy, running what we were running. So it was to save the marriage, save the sanity, and turn around and do the right thing. So, I mean, we just buckled down and knew that we had a plan going forward, and knew that we could make the right connections to build that back up pretty quickly. And we did. Again, being a small operation, we don't have that. At the time, we didn't have that overhead. Part of my discussion here today is about hiring people and stuff. So we were scratching that out ourselves. So we didn't have a lot of overhead that we had to carry. So we had the ability to say, all right, let's start over. Let's churn this thing.
Conrad, that was the real answer. He just said it right there, right? It was either his wife gave him an ultimatum. It's like either you fire your owners or you fire me. We're getting divorced. The boss.
We all know what's going to cost more. That's for sure. We've seen that happen before.
Yeah.
I have one follow-up, Chris. What you say makes complete sense, and I think a lot of people that have come, into the homeowner marketing world, they want to sign these premium homes. They want to sign the oceanfront homes, the best homes. But my sort of contention in the past has been, it's hard to build that trust when you can't point to your existing portfolio. So when you restarted and then you said, how did you get your first 5 or 3 or 4 to trust you and say, yeah, I'll take care of your home. I was doing this before, but don't worry, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to focus on you. How did you build that trust with the first handful to give you, $100,000 per year rental income?
Yeah, no doubt. Great question. I mean, because people, like, well, who's this guy? He doesn't have any properties, you don't have any marketing, this, that, and the other. But what we build on is service. And a lot of these clients here that are very wealthy, it's about saving their time. If you can save a person's time from having to deal with any hassles whatsoever with managing their property and take that off their plate, time is the most valuable thing that affluent people have. And if you can assure them that you can manage their, the property and they not be involved with it, and we can do an excellent job in maintaining that property so it looks pristine every time they come to enjoy it. They don't have to come down here and replace light bulbs and fix blinds and stuff like that. Very service oriented is what I guess is the bottom line, is that, and that's what we are. We're super service oriented with our properties and our owners.
Did you sell most of the properties that you ended up representing them as a real estate agent? Is that so? You already were with them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they trusted you because you did a good job in the transaction. Whether buy or sell, or
95% of our portfolio today is everything that I've helped people buy in the industry.
So that's the key. You've already earned their trust and the rapport.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, we can move on to number two, Chris. I just have some good thoughts because I think that's such an
Sure.
important piece, like you said, Brooke. But yeah, how many are willing to make negative progress? Not many. The only thing that's come up recently, we talked about this maybe a little while ago. I do have a client I worked with previously, Chris. He did sell to Casa a few years ago, but his logic was a set number. So his is like, I'm going to have 40. And every time I get a new home, I'm going to make sure it's of better quality than my previous one. And then I will exit that one out of the portfolio. So over time, he had 40 the whole time I worked with him. I worked with him for like 3 or 4 years before he sold to Casa. But over every year, he got better in terms of quality of inventory. The number didn't change, but he went from more condos, smaller townhomes to bigger townhomes than houses. And this was in Steamboat Springs, very different market, obviously. But the philosophy was interesting, one that I don't see.
There you go. No, and we still do that today. I mean, I'm not everything that I technically have is quote unquote our luxury brand like I want it to be. Most of it is, but we're bringing, as we find new opportunities, we will slide some off the table for sure.
And the bar changes over time, like the competitiveness of the market. If you go look in the market at Hilton Head, you sort highest revenue, lowest revenue in AirDNA or something, the bar gets higher. So luxury becomes a relative term, obviously. So
that's right.
Yeah. Well, number two, let me go this way because you mentioned owners a few times already. So I think this is a good follow-up then, just the way it naturally folded in here. Staying in touch with owners. Having great owners is important, obviously, but you can get relaxed and maybe just get into that service delivery mode. Don't take their silence for granted and stay in touch was how you ended that mistake, which I think is an important lesson. So how do you handle owner communication today with your company? How do you make them feel, that they know what's going on with what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody gets busy, right? We're all busy. There's no doubt about it, but you've got to put some things at the forefront, and those are the ones that are taking care of you, because without your owners and your properties, then you don't have a business. So, we send out a quarterly newsletter as a market update to our owners. So that's kind of a blanket thing, but then we also pick up the phone and actually call our owners, check in with them, see how things are going. And we also do some other things. I'm sure other people do this, but every time an owner comes in town, they get a gift basket kind of thing, thanking them for their service, thanking them for their business, if you will. So we just stay highly in touch with our owners. Some of your owners are more engaged than you like for them to be, but that's okay too. And then other owners, that you don't ever hear from, they're appreciative. They like what you do, but at the same time, you've got to pick up that phone and call them and just say, hey, Mr. and Ms. Jones, hope you're doing well. How are the kids? Just wanted to call to say hello. If there's anything that we can do better for you, just let us know. I just want to let you know we're here. We care. We want to work, continue, being a solid partner with you. And it's just a 5-minute touch point, because usually they don't have anything to say. They do appreciate the call, and it's, it's a touch point that matters. So it makes all the difference in the world in keeping your communication open with your owners.
Yeah, I think Lino Maldonado with Scenic Stays, he said you can never over communicate with your owners, and I think Jason Sprinkle said the same thing on that. And it reminds me of, and I'm forgetting who it was, but they would have actually like a quarterly touch point like requirement in their CRM. So they had an owner CRM, and they were required, whoever the property manager was, that was the kind of the owner liaison, they were required to touch base with them at least once a quarter. And the reason why is they didn't want to, what they realized was the only time they were reaching out to these owners was when there was a problem, whether it was a guest issue, something was broken. And it's like, man, the only time you call me is when something's bad, when something's negative, So if you have these positive reinforcements as well, and again, you're going to hopefully find out if there's any kind of issues proactively rather than just getting a cancellation notice, and that point, by the time you got that cancellation notice, it's too late. But if they just would have told you, if you had the opportunity, if you were talking to them, they could have told you something was bugging them, you could have fixed it. And that's why we used to always, at least once a season or twice a season, we would send out an NPS survey to our owners. And the idea, Chris, was the exact same thing. So at least we could find out from them if there were any issues, so we had the time to solve it rather than it becoming a problem once we've, just got the cancellation notice.
Yeah, and you've got your competition is talking to your owners, so you better be talking to them too. So they're definitely reaching out to them one way or another, whether it's a postcard, phone call, whatever the case may be. So you got to stay relevant in their world, because if they never hear from you, then I don't ever hear from these guys. They don't really care about me. And when you do, and you really do care about your owners, I mean, a lot of our owners have become very close friends of ours. I mean, we'll go out to dinner with them and stuff like that. But some of the owners are not. You never hear from them, and they come in town. They never call, they never write, anything. And so you've got to make that step just to keep the lines of communication open.
Yeah, right on. Well, number 3, kind of switching gears a little bit here, a touch, Chris, on people. So number 3 was about knowing when to fire, particularly when to know when to fire fast or quickly. So even once you kind of revamped the company and you started launching with the more, premium properties, maybe you had some people that weren't a good fit. So what's it like, today in terms of, you mentioned that you do have a payroll, you have a staff. How have you kind of found the right people, and how have you, when needed in the past, moved on from people that weren't a good fit for you?
Yeah, you try to, you guys know me somewhat. I'm a big-hearted guy. I like to help people out, and certainly when people in a tough spot, you try to lend a hand and lift people up. And I've done that from time to time. And unfortunately, it turns out it's just I hired for the wrong reason, and it just was not a good fit for the business. Now, I was helping John Doe out or Janie Sue out, and getting them on their feet again, and really trying to do the right thing. And but when you really look at your business and how they're operating and what they're contributing or the lack of their contribution, and yet you're paying out all this money on the payroll side, it's like, yeah, this was not it's the most effective move I could have made. So sometimes you just got to cut the cord and let things go their merry way. And ultimately they end up going and finding something that they're very interested in and do their thing, and that's fine. But you got to recognize that if people aren't as passionate about your business as you are, now not everybody's going to be as passionate as the owner, but they need to be passionate about what they're doing and have the burning and desire in their gut to be successful with every transaction, every owner, every communication with every guest, making sure that every property is exactly as it should be for every guest that's coming in the door. Because again, we inspect those properties on every single turn. And when you're not performing those tasks that you're, full well know that is your responsibility, and we're starting to get complaints and stuff, and you're not fixing that problem, you gotta make changes. It's just, I'm a pretty lenient guy, and I give you all the chances in the world, but at the same time, we're running a business here, and if you can't uphold your end of the bargain, I need to find somebody who can.
I think just about every entrepreneur out there says the same thing on this one. And I think half the people in the book said the same thing, but it's, as Steve Trover calls it, 3 days of suck. It sucks for 3 days. It sucks, leading up to it. But once those 3 days are over, it's back to everyone's like, oh, thank goodness. So glad you did that. Got rid of that virus, got rid of that cancer. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And same thing for owners. It's not just staff. I mean, you get owners, they got, I've had owners with $5 million properties and they were great properties, but the owner was just a complete, he just didn't work with our operation. As service oriented as you can be, it just was never enough. It was always constant something, and it was just like, okay, how much time, energy, and effort do I need to put into this? One property when it really was all uncalled for. So you got to realize that you got to find, if you got time wasters. I teach my realtors this, that if somebody's wasting your time, don't let them waste your time. Your time is the most valuable thing you've got as well, and you got to put a price on that. And if somebody's wasting that time, cut them loose. It's not worth it. Don't keep chasing it, because all they're doing is burning up your time.
Yeah,
we didn't know that one, did we? The fire owners?
Yeah, that one's a common one. The way that I think about this internally, I don't know how you guys think about this on your side, Brooke, but I say there's people who give an unreasonable number of reasonable requests. So sometimes we get reasonable requests, from clients or, projects or things we're working on. But sometimes it's like, all right, you're actually kind of making reasonable requests, but you're making an unreasonable number of them. It's just nonstop. Like you said, this is off, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And to your point, it's just not a good fit anymore. So.
Right.
That's kind of the way that I've thought about it. So, well, maybe that brings us nicely into number 4, which is a little bit different. I don't know if I heard this much, although I've heard people doing this. I don't think we've covered it on previous episodes with too much detail. So number 4 was not having a per month management fee. So for years we would chase down every little light bulb, battery, air filter, small things, and it was kind of maddening and a waste of people's time. So you developed a per month management fee that covered small incidental items, small repairs, things like that. So that people, you could go do those small things a little bit more easily. So I guess if you're willing to share, what does that fee kind of look like? How do you decide what a fair fee is on both sides, and how has that helped you just make the operation maybe simpler as well?
Yeah, man, that's the smartest thing I've ever done. I mean, it's basically a general fund. So every property, whether it's a villa, it pays, I think it's $95 a month, and homes pay like $150 a month. And it covers a slew of things. I don't have to worry about buying a light bulb, making sure it gets into the accounting system, get my wife involved to do an invoice, put it on the statement for the owner to call up and ask me why I'm charging him $6 for a light bulb. It's a complete waste of everybody's time. So besides that, we expanded that into air filters. We change them 4 times a year, so you don't have to worry about it. Batteries. We even leave extra batteries in cabinets or wherever for the guests in case a remote battery goes out. You got batteries. If they happen to take them and put them in their little remote control thing that they game the kids have got or whatever, so be it. It's convenience for them. But we expanded it even into doing extra amenities like full dishwasher soaps and rinse aids. It's Drano. It's actual hand soaps at every sink. That instead of this little square bar that the housekeepers leave, it's an actual full soap jar kind of thing. And we've even expanded it more this year. We're actually supplying trash bags, tinfoil, saran wrap, those types of things that you think about if you're coming into town for 3 or 4 nights and staying at a place and you're trying to cook a meal or whatever. You don't need to go buy saran wrap. You don't need to go buy tinfoil, that kind of thing. So it's a convenience item that we use as a marketing tool for our properties as well. And hey, look, stay with us. You don't have to bring all this crap. You don't have to go to the store and buy all this stuff. And so it's been well received. And it's the owners love it when they come in because they don't have to deal with that stuff either. They've got everything that they need. And it's just accounting wise, it's clean, so, and my staff knows if we run out of something, go buy some more and put it in there, and we keep backup stock in owners' closets and stuff. So it's worked out really, really well. In fact, several other companies in the area have mimicked this since I introduced this, because again, what are we chasing a $6 light bulb for? It's right. Just a waste of everybody's time.
Well, yeah. You probably save more time and money than just all the pushing all the paper and the tracking of it, right? Like how many hours is Absolutely. It to actually do all that? And so the funny that you're right, Conrad, we didn't hear it. We haven't heard anybody say this actually, but when I was at the management company down in Orlando, we did the same thing, Chris. And it was, we called it like to avoid the $80, trip charge to replace a light bulb. You know what I mean? Say, look, we know it's going to upset you when you get nickeled and dimed to death, when you get wait, it cost me, inevitably a light bulb goes out. It's going to cost you $80 to replace it, or a battery in the smoke detector went out. It's always after hours. It's like, rather than just charging you those $85 and you screaming at me, we're just going to include all that. Like you said, the air conditioner filters, we even included like minor touch-up paint as well. Just so all those little preventative maintenance type things, it's all included in it, rather than we call it like the nickel and diming, avoiding the nickel and diming calls, and, some of your competitors may use it as actual against you, say, hey, well, we don't charge a monthly fee. But I'm sure if you get a chance and opportunity to talk to them about it and explain what it includes, it actually ends up saving them money in the end.
It does, and it's peace of mind. You go from 3-page invoices or, owner statements at the end of the month to a single page with nothing on it. Here's your income, here's a commission. Here's, okay, we had to fix a dishwasher. I can't fix dishwashers, but we called the guy to fix that. Other than that, there's nothing on their statement. So it's clean, it's crisp. They know what their monthly statements are going to be. They know what their expenditures are. They're happy about it. I mean, I don't have a single owner that's not happy with that program, because like you said, I mean, if we have to come in and if we can fix the blind or fix the toilet handle or whatever the case may be, we just do it. Don't come to me and let's chase paper around for right. Stupid stuff. I mean, because it's we're in the service business. Let's get it done. Kind of
I'm going to take it one step further. I heard, and this is a little bit different, but they did not charge a commission. They only charged a monthly management fee. And it was just a spin on how they did it. Now they knew exactly what the property was roughly going to do. So what they said is, hey, we know we're going to do this. We're going to charge you a 0% commission, but we're going to charge you $1,000 a month management fee, a $1,200 a month management fee, $2,000 a month management fee, whatever they, equivalent would have been. But it was just an interesting right. kind of spin on it, on how they made net. They ended up netting the same amount or pretty close to it, but it was just a different spin on the way you what position. I thought was interesting.
That is interesting. I hadn't heard that one.
I've seen, Brooke, I've been involved with some of these higher end property managers, and I know that they typically get very low commissions on a very high booking value. So I'm talking like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 booking values. They might only get a 5% commission. But yeah, that's kind of what the bulk of their business is, more caring for the property, caring for the asset. And then, yes, when there's a booking, we'll kind of take care of that side of it. So it's a different mindset, because someone who owns a $10 million home might think about it differently. It's often not an investment. It's, something that they use themselves personally, or there's some benefit to it. So I've certainly seen that. One thing I've seen, Chris, some people label that like an owner technology fee because their software costs have gone up so much over the last few years, and they said, hey, look, we've been eating all these costs the whole time. We have to have some kind of monthly fee to share some of our expenses here. But if you were to go sign up for every single tool that you need to run your business, believe me, you'd be paying a lot more than $100 or $200 a month. You'd be paying thousands of dollars a month like we are. So I've seen that one too. I talked someone into that recently, actually doing that, and she was able to go back to 30 owners and charge $100 a month, and she just found a bunch of expenses that she can kind of cover with that fee. So it's one of those things. You got to build trust. You can't just do that off of the first interaction with someone. But she delivers for her owners, so they were maybe not thrilled, but they tolerated it, and she didn't lose anybody from it. So yeah. So number 5, kind of checking back in, maybe Chris, to people and kind of the team and that side of it. So failing to hire sooner. So as soon as you grew, maybe you were a little bit hesitant to hire more staff, and focus on your family with your wife involved, and maybe your son involved a little bit too, like we were joking about earlier. But eventually you had to hire staff members, and that was a good decision when you did that. So I've heard the expression before, hire when it hurts. It sounds like you were living that, hiring when it hurt. But how do you know that when it was time to hire, and what's kind of your philosophy today of hiring and bringing new people in the team?
Yeah, I mean, we were young and fire in the belly, and we'd do anything we had to do, to make it work. And we built it up. I think we had gotten to 8 or 10 properties or something like that. And with the turnovers and the commitment that we've got to service and all this stuff, we just realized that, okay, if we're going to, we wanted to bring on more properties, that in order to do that, we needed some help, because we were going to kill ourselves if we weren't, or kill each other. And also while I'm selling real estate as well. And so I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, time value proposition. Where's the value? If I can bring on a staff member that's going to relieve some of that pressure from what I'm having to do, some of what she's having to do, gives us both some relief there, and then also frees up more time to sell more real estate. So we did hang on what I thought was a little bit too long in that situation. And finally we did hire, and we actually hired 2 people at that time, because we had some additional opportunities come up where we jumped from like 10 to 18, 19 properties at one time. So we grew very quickly there for a minute, but it just, you worry, I mean, as a business owner, you got only so much cash coming in, what your business is doing, and then you're going to go commit. My biggest fear is not actually hiring somebody. It's that I need to be able to support that person, because that person's relying on their livelihood for what I do in order to write their paycheck. So I don't want to put myself in a position where I've got to let somebody go 6 months later because I've told them I'd pay them X number of dollars as a salary so they could live, and now I got to turn around and let them go because I can't do that. So that was my big fear, is just overcommitting on the payroll side and not being able to meet that. We had some fortunate opportunities that allowed us to all of a sudden jump, and we were able to fold in a couple of great staff members that worked out really well.
I guess, Chris, if you're going to go back and do it again, or any kind of advice for the listeners, like when is the right time to hire, to bring on those people? Is it if you could do it again, what would it look like? When do you hire?
It's a good question. I think, you've got to figure out what your business metrics are with your company and say, okay, for every 5 units, I need a person, or for every 10 units, I need a person, and understand that number of units is going to support that staff member. Everybody's situation is different based on the revenue that your market and your product's going to bring in. But because I had switched to the high end market, as far as, demanding larger revenue streams, just out of before I would take the property on, that gave me the comfort and the ability to be able to make those decisions. So some people, that have some of these smaller operations, or smaller properties, I should say, that are renting for $1,000 a week, where mine are renting for $10,000 a week. That's a big difference. And so, it's almost on a case by case basis, I think. But at some point, you've got to realize that there's more to life than work, and you've got to get some help to help you out and make sure that you don't, burn yourself out. Because once you do that, you're not any good to anybody, yourself, your family, your owners, or anybody. You're just, you're not a good person to be hanging around, and you got to realize that within yourself. So financially, it comes down to, when can you actually pull that trigger? So, and then that varies based on just what it is you're managing, I think.
I've always said those early days are so hard, because you don't have any money to pay anybody, but you also don't have any time yourself. So you're just literally burning the candle at both ends, and it just makes it so difficult. So it's really, really challenging in those early days. You just don't have enough margins, but again, you don't have a choice. So that's why this business is so hard until you can, scale up the business enough where you actually have some extra free cash,
Right. Yeah. I was in the food and beverage business for 12, 15 years. I went to culinary school and was in resort management. I was working 90 hours a week and then got into real estate and started doing real estate and was working, 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week in real estate, opened up a rental management company. Now I'm back to working 90 hours a week, but at least it's for myself. But you grind it out, man. You got to do what you got to do in order to get there. But have that goal and have that in mindset so that when you do grow and you grow right and you grow properly so that you can afford those other assets that you need. You need human assets to help you out. You can't do everything yourself. You just can't.
Yeah. I've always felt with me personally, it's like, taking a leap, and I guess my hope is that I'm hopping down 2 or 3 stairs, not 12, so it's like you sometimes have to eventually be like, I need to bring this person on, it's going to be a little bit more of a financial commitment. But if I'm hopping down 2 or 3 stairs, it's like, all right, maybe if I sign 2 more clients, like that'll help me level me out pretty quickly. I'll get back to where I was, but I just don't want to have to leap down 10 stairs at the same time. That's how you fall and break your ankle.
There
right?
you go.
So
yeah.
how much can you chew off, in one sitting? So.
Right.
So same kind of thing, maybe not on the team side, more on the tech side, number 6 on your list here, Chris, hanging on to the old because it's easier, maybe more on the technology or PMS side. So you mentioned you started with a particular PMS system. You were happy because you maybe didn't know what alternatives were out there. And then eventually you made a PMS change to a newer system, maybe a more modern system, and you saw a lot of benefit from it. So how do you kind of choose when to change technology? Because it is kind of painful to change tech, particular PMS. How do you know when it is time to change or when it is time to kind of stick with what you got? How do you think about that now?
Yeah, well, starting out in '07, it wasn't quite the vast market that it is today as far as the options in PMS world, right? And, really, technology was just really starting to take off at that time. And we had a great partner, great people. They got us to where we, needed to be and did what we needed them to do. But over time, as technology continued to evolve, and going to conferences and things and talking to different people in the business and figuring out, oh, you can do that automatically. Oh, you can do that automatically. The system will help you do that. Because you look at the big picture and say, okay, well, I'm spending so many hours a week doing this task or so many hours a month doing this task. At some point you realize that, you're not in the right spot. You've got opportunities, you got tools in the business that can help you become a lot more efficient, streamline your process so that you yourself are not working hours on end to try to get reporting done at the end of the month or email marketing out or whatever the case may be, guest communications and things like that. And so, knock on wood, our industry has evolved quite a bit. I think it's exciting as to as much evolution that we're seeing in the industry. I think there's a lot of great things forthcoming, of course, in a lot of industries, but especially in the vacation rental space, because up to 2000, there really wasn't much technology in the business at all. It was all, postcards and writing checks, right? And so we came to a realization that the company that we were with was just not keep evolving with the markets. And so, we finally bit the bullet 4 years ago and changed PMS. I mean, God bless the guys that are trying to sell PMS systems, because it's the hardest thing that any one manager could ever do is change from one PMS to another. It is. I'd rather stick a needle in my eye than to go through that again. It's just painful. It's a very painful process. And when you're trying to run multiple companies and do different things, it's even more painful because, you gotta spend a lot of time doing that. But we're grateful we made the change and it's helped streamline our operations. And so you gotta bite the bullet and make that change. If your systems and stuff and things are not doing your daily work more efficient for you on an ongoing basis, you really need to evaluate your own time. I always look at my own time. I say, okay, how much am I worth per hour? And I tell all of my team that works with me, how much are you worth per hour? I don't know how much it is. You tell me. Okay, well then for every hour of your working day, this is what it's valued to you. If you're not doing something that's worth that value, then you need to stop doing it or find something else that will do it for you. And so, when you look at things like that, it can change the way you look at things in a lot of ways. Because if you're spending 4 hours a day and you value your time at $300 an hour, or whatever the case may be, that's $1,200 a day you're burning on doing this task. Is it worth $1,200? I don't know. Whatever your number is, you got to figure it out. And can something else do it in 2 hours or 1 hour or 30 minutes? So you got to figure that out.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Have you been pretty happy with your new PMS?
Yeah, I have.
You want to give a shout out to that PMS?
Oh, Barefoot. Yeah, they've been a great team. Small, they're a small player, but they're a great team. They're service oriented. We're a small player. We're high highly involved in our properties and what we need a system to do, and the communication with our guests and stuff like that. And so their niche market is perfect for us, and have done very well for us.
There you go.
Sure.
Shout out for Barefoot. You're welcome, Ed.
Ed owes you a beer now with the next VRMA. I will say they do sit in a unique spot. Just my personal experience with them, Chris, having some clients that use their system where they will customize it for you, right? And that's such a rare thing in this space, because so many PMS platforms, even really great ones, just kind of say this is how it works, that's how it is, and they're not like that. So
there you go. Yeah, they've been great to work with. Yep.
Absolutely. All right, so let me go to number 7 here. So this is a fun quote that you saw that I just read off here. What we have is a failure to communicate. So talking about getting the right communication in place with the guests themselves and getting that and stuff. You talked about homeowner communication a few blocks ago, Chris. Tell me about the guest communication. How do you guys have that dialed in now, both with the PMS you're using or what you're doing internally with your processes?
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like a lot of what we do in this industry is we need to communicate, whether it be owners, guests, employees, staff members, marketing, whatever the case may be. But communication is key, and having systems in place to streamline that is important. We brought on Breezeway for their email. Their guest texting app, which has been fantastic because now we can communicate with the guests directly when they're here in an automated fashion, where it sounds like we're actually reaching out directly to them on a one-on-one level. Knock on wood, we don't have to do that because of the volume. It can get pretty high for us from time to time. But also email communications and automations when a reservation comes in. As a smaller company, when you're a smaller operation, your biggest challenge is trust with your guest, because they don't know who you are. They don't recognize the name, and you've got to build that trust with them to ensure that they're in a comfortable spot. Because if people aren't comfortable with whatever they're buying, in any case, you're buying a widget from the store, or offline, whatever the case may be, you're not real sure if the thing's going to work the way it should. Well, we're here to communicate immediately when the reservation comes in, a week later, 2 weeks before arrival. All of these communications, there's about 16 different communication points with a guest without being, a burden to them, because a lot of it is very informative communication, puts their mind at ease throughout their entire process, which has helped lift our Google reviews. Our company reviews have gone through the roof. And our repeat business has gone through the roof because we are communicating with people. People know that we care. When they have an issue, it gets resolved immediately, kind of thing. And that's part of communication, right, amongst our team. So communication is key. It's nothing more aggravating than to order something or buy something and then never hear from the company again, and not real sure if you're going to get the product, not real sure if it does what it does. Even if you got a question about the product itself and you ask somebody and then it disappears into the oblivion, that's not a good experience, right? So you got to think about the aggravation and the anxiety that you put in people's minds when you're not communicating effectively with people. And when you do communicate, and sometimes, yes, we do have to. Sometimes we'll get the comment from the guy who made the reservation. Usually it's mostly women, but the guy who made the reservation is like, "My God, would you guys stop texting me or whatever?" I'm like, "Well, dude, 99% of our people love what we do because it brings information to them, So we don't want to over communicate, but at the same time, we want to be effective in what we're delivering."
Yeah, but it's kind of like what we talked about earlier, right? The over communication, maybe perturbs people a tiny bit in some situations, but it's much worse than the alternative, right? If I didn't hear from you, especially like you said, luxury premium rentals going for $15,000 a week, and I gave this company $15,000, and they didn't say a word to me, right? That's
right. Exactly. You don't value my business. No, we value your business very much, and we want to show you that we value your business. So it's the communications oftentimes are double linked. One, it's very informative about where you're staying or things to do while you're around that particular property, or maybe even events in the area, that kind of thing. But it's also maybe some questions about what we need from them as well. So it's twofold. Hey, we need to know this, but at the same time, hey, try these things out while you're here, kind of thing. So it's not all about it's about supporting their experience is what it boils down to.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think I can double end 8 and 9 here, Chris, because I think they kind of speak to the same idea, and maybe there's something you could share kind of about your discovery and the other project that you're involved with because of this. So number 8, for the benefit of the listener here, is not understanding the value of direct booking. So maybe for a long time you were more OTA focused, and then over time you kind of realized the benefit of direct. That uncovered an insight for you that maybe gave you an idea. But it ties into number 9, which is talking about your reputation. Maybe you're not the biggest, you don't have the most properties in the island, like we've talked about before, but how do you make sure people know you well? So maybe talk about those 2 ideas, and then what kind of tech discovery did you make along the way when you were working on getting more direct bookings on your website?
Yeah, for 15 years we were highly reliant on the OTAs because that's just all we knew, and that worked well for us. This is a big VRBO destination on Hilton Head, and it worked fine, and didn't really think much of it until you should really start looking at the numbers in several different ways. It's not just the numbers themselves that people are staying longer, they're booking further out, and that kind of thing. But you also have now, you own the guest communication. And you get that guest loyalty through that communication, as we just talked about. But you also get the guest reviews, and reviews are being written about your company versus a third party company. So it all kind of folds in together. And actually, we did a study with the Key Data's end of year stats that shows how impactful raising your direct bookings. At the time, I was at 23% direct bookings. Now I'm at 70%. That is a massive lift. We took those numbers and looked at the longer length of stay, the fact that they were booking further out, so you weren't discounting your property, okay, and then the higher ADR because they're staying longer, they're paying more when they do book direct, because a lot of times your last minute stuff on VRBO, whatever, is discounted pricing, but then you take into factors of your escrow account. I'm holding on to my money. Well, VRBO doesn't hold your money, but Airbnb does. So if you're heavy on Airbnb, that's expensive. They're making a ton of money off of that. In fact, I just did the quarterly report thing that you just sent out and ran those numbers. It's $740,000 a day they're making off of interest. A day. Just off interest.
There's worse things than that. There's worse businesses.
And I'm sure they've got some. Their CFO is pretty sophisticated. I'm sure he's gotten some pretty decent returning vehicles too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Not just a money market account in his bank.
Yeah,
a money market account with billions of dollars in it, just like checks it every day. Like, yep, I justified my salary today.
yeah. So it's crazy. I was using 3% return on that money. I was like, it's probably more than that, but
it could be double that.
Yeah, it could be. So in looking at that, we wanted to change our position because we only had about 20 Google reviews at the time, and again, it was about trust with the client. So people didn't really trust us as a company. We wanted to change that mantra and build on that trust of our company. So we needed more people booking directly with us. It's really not about money in the end of the day. It's really about having that guest relationship and having that trust with your guest. Because the money will come, right? I mean, that's just always my philosophy in everything that I do. I don't focus on the money. I focus on the end results. When the end results are positive, then the money will come, okay? That's just how I've always worked. And so my partner and I that did my website for my vacation rental company has done my real estate websites as well. We came up with an idea of the price comparison tool. And it's changed. It literally turned my company completely 180 degrees from 23% direct bookings to 80, now 70% direct bookings. It's made a tremendous difference in my company, and it's made a tremendous difference in my staff and everything that we do because we're not relying on somebody else. We have guest communication. We're getting more loyal clients. It's just been a lift all the way around for the operations. It's been so positive.
And are you using that in your marketing to owners when you present to a new owner? Is that kind of a differentiator too?
It is. We do use it, and we've got some data that goes on the back end that we can show the owners of what great job we're doing in marketing in that particular location to support them in their property and let them know that we're actually driving revenue for that area and that we can support them in our ecosystem and do a good job, bringing value to their property. But also we use it in our email communication to our guest database. I mean, we've been doing this for 7 to 18 years. We got a pretty decent database. We'll email back those clients that have stayed through the OTAs and put a little screenshot of that in there. And they're like, okay. I had Miss Jones, if you will, from this one house that would come back through VRBO every year. I'm like, Miss Jones, why don't you just book direct? Well, I just like them. Okay, well, guess what? She started seeing this on my website. She's like, I don't really like them that much. I'm like, okay, I've tried to tell you. So that's why, we've gone to 42% repeat business, direct. So it's been very, very impactful. very
Chris,
impactful.
I think last week we were talking about this, and this is Conrad's specialty. Obviously, is helping try to drive direct bookings. And I think you said, Conrad, like the optimal split is that 65 to 70% direct
Yeah.
bookings. And
I think that's bang on. I don't think you want to be too much ahead of that necessarily. I mean, if it happens, it happens. But I think there's optimal numbers in gathering more, direct bookings through, Airbnb and Vrbo, and then you're present there. You'll show up, you'll get visibility there. But I think you've got a really winning formula. And just as a quick, sidebar, I know we're here mostly talking about your vacational business, obviously, Chris, but we have been, some of our clients use this tool on their website as well. So we'll put a link in the show notes so people can check it out and learn more about that.
We have a lot of our partners that are using it. Chris, hats off to you and the team for building this. I've seen it firsthand, and I've seen a lot of our partners use it, and I see how they're driving direct bookings, directly from it. So good job to you guys for seeing the void and the need in the industry for it, and then going out there and actually doing something about it and building a product. So building software products is not easy, especially when they have they pay for themselves 10x over very, very quickly. So good job.
It definitely has not been easy. That has been a larger road to hoe than I thought it would be. I mean, it's cost obviously a lot more money than I thought it ever would, but that's okay. It's having an effect, and it's having an impact on the market. It's changing a lot of companies for the better, and we're glad to be where we're at. I appreciate it. Absolutely.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I think we got 2 left here, Chris. We got number 10, and then Brooks got a question, I think, to bring us home. So we'll try to, wrap it up here and get to an end. But it's been awesome so far, Chris. So we appreciate you, taking the time. But number 10 was an interesting one. So maybe if we haven't already gone through kind of this topic yet, any final thoughts here on, you mentioned taking your hands off the wheel. You own 3 companies. You've talked at length about the tech side, obviously the real estate side and the vacational side, how to make sure you kind of keep your eye on the ball and keep a pulse of what's going on, even if maybe that company or that project is not in your focus at that given time frame. How do you handle it? How do you juggle out those balls and keep them all in the air, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, it's a great question. My staff asks me that all the time. Like, how in the hell do you do this? Because it's a lot. But it comes from being organized and to an extent. At the same time, I'm giving my staff the leeway to lead for themselves. And give them the growth that they want to do and improvements that they want to do. I give them the leeway to make those changes and improvements. But at the same time, you got to stay involved because the communication is important. Again, go back. We've said communication throughout this whole conversation is you got to communicate. And so we have weekly meetings every week where everybody chimes in, talks about their challenges, talks about their wants and desires, and we all work through things. And we my phone is never off. They can always call me, kind of thing. And I'm in the office every single day. I'm visible. But yeah, you can, if you sidetrack too much into one direction and forget about one of your operations, well, it's definitely, you're going to see it faltering because you just got to stay involved. No, not everybody has all the answers, and usually the guy like me that really is driving the train as far as the innovation and stuff is the guy who's thinking outside the box and bringing new ideas to the group. Not that the group certainly brings ideas, but my mind's always churning, so I'm always looking for the next cool thing to do, the next neat idea, such as the per month management fee. Let's get rid of this crap. Let's put that in place. That kind of thing. But, it's all about communication and meeting and staying in touch with your staff, because even though you're out doing other things and know you're trying to do the right thing to conquer the world or whatever it is you're doing, you need to stay in front of them and keep them relevant and important in your operations.
Well said. And I think we'll end it there. So the last question I have for you, Chris, is if you could go back in time and ask your 25-year-old self or give your 25-year-old self a little bit of advice, what would it be?
I don't know, maybe buying Google or Apple stock sooner. I think probably the most important one is personal value, placing a value on your time and what you're doing every day, and really understanding the value of time and what is it worth to you and how much money do you want to make this year? Well, okay, that's how much your hourly net worth is. Now, just go out, do it, and make sure that every hour that you spend on any task are worth reaching that goal and making sure that you get there. So just having that forethought to understand where your revenue is coming from and where your expenses are going and how you can control both and still live your life.
Love that.
That's great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, Yeah, Chris, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I know we're up against it as far as the time we had with you today, so we thank you. We'll put some links in the description to the show. People can obviously check out direct booking tools. I think that'll definitely be of interest to some people listening. And then, of course, we'll put a link to your company. People
Thank you very much.
If they're ever having them down there to Hilton Head, they should stay with you. So thanks so much. We appreciate it. And we'll catch everyone in the next episode. Drop us a review in your podcast app of choice, Spotify, iTunes. That's where we get the most downloads. We appreciate a review there the most. Thanks so much.
All right.